I'm Todd Churchill, the founder and co-owner of Thousand Hills Cattle Company in Cannon Falls. We raise 100% grass-fed beef with no antibiotics, no added hormones, no chemicals, no feedlots, and no grain. And you might wonder why is somebody in the beef business on this panel? Why did I go to Washington to talk about clean energy and jobs legislation? That's a good question. Most of the people that were on that group, the 220 business people, were in the renewable energy industry. And it was very interesting being a part of that and looking at that from agriculture. Because the truth is, agriculture has the exact same problems that energy does. And the model is so compatible with what Gerardo just talked about. We have had cheap food and cheap energy in this country for the last 40 or 50 years. We've benefited from that. In 1950, the average family spent 11 to 15%, actually 15 to 16% of their budget on food. Now it's 8%. What's interesting is that there isn't any free lunch. We now spend, what we've saved on food, we now spend on health care. So we have produced a quantity of food, but the quality has gone down over the last 40 or 50 years. That quantity of food is based on cheap, reliable energy, and it's based on mining the carbon out of the soil. Our prairie soils in Minnesota, prior to being settled, had about 10% organic matter. That means 10% of the total weight of the soil was carbon that was pulled out of the atmosphere by the prairie grasses and permanently sequestered in the soil. That's different than carbon that's sequestered in a tree, because when that tree dies and falls over, it rots and the carbon goes back to the atmosphere. Carbon that's sequestered in the soil is a permanent sink. We have reduced that carbon level from 10% of the total weight of the soil to 2 to 5% now. Where did that carbon go? Well, it's in the atmosphere. We have mined that carbon in order to produce a larger harvest of primarily row crops, grains. And if we can figure out how to take that carbon out of the atmosphere and put it back permanently into the soil, that's a very powerful thing to do. And we know how to do that. For the last 7 years, we have been developing systems on how do we raise livestock in a way that we produce a better product, superior in quality and flavor, without the use of antibiotics. We can eliminate all the modern problems of the feedlot industry, which is a lot of antibiotic-resistant bacteria, added hormones in the meat supply, a tremendous amount of erosion that's caused by raising all this corn and soybeans. We can do all those things and simultaneously pull carbon out of the atmosphere and put it into the permanent carbon sink that's in the soil. To do that, we need to more accurately, in order to make that happen, we have to more accurately account for the true cost of agriculture. What does it really cost us to raise corn and soybeans? It costs more than just the cost of the farmer's labor and the cost of the tractor and the land. There's a cost to the environment. There's a cost to our health when we use a model that's less than ideal. And I'm not interested in judging the various different models, exactly like my solar energy compatriot here. I'm interested in looking at the different models and saying, is the one we're using today the best? If not, let's migrate to a better model. If there's a way to raise livestock in a way that we can accomplish all the objectives, and I think we can probably all agree that less antibiotics in our meat, less hormones in our meat would be a good thing. We can agree that less feedlots would probably be a good thing. We can agree that more omega-3 fats in our meat supply would be a good thing. Very few people are going to disagree about that. Let's figure out how to migrate from the old model, which is very energy intensive, very hard on the environment, to a new model. And we can do that, contrary to what the conventional industry tells us. We can do that without raising less food, without starving people. We can accomplish that. In order to do that, it would be greatly beneficial if we had federal energy legislation that capped the amount of carbon emissions and forced every industry to accurately account for the energy that's used. If we can do that, the market will move dramatically towards more energy efficient solutions in every industry. And that's why I'm particularly impassioned about doing everything that I can do to both personally and in my business, and also as an advocate to my legislators in Congress, to establish some sort of a permanent limit on the amount of carbon that can be emitted.